This video is about negative self-talk. Negative self-talk, what it is, where it comes from, the impact it has not only on our lives, but also those around us. And then lastly, what we can do. Just got myself thinking. What we can do to deal with it, to incorporate it, to understand it. What we can do to balance it out. Because at the end of the day, negative self-talk comes from a fragmented view of self, which I will explain a bit later. So saying that you need to deal with negative self-talk isn't really the right terminology. It is really a matter of learning, yes, through an integrative guided process, how to make peace with these sides of yourself that you are not yet at peace with. That's perfect. What I wanted to say. Now, first, in my personal opinion, right, this is based on my own life, as well as the people I work with, all negative self-talk in our internal narrative based is caused by trauma. It's caused by developmental trauma, right? Sometimes big T traumas, but it's caused by trauma. Unresolved trauma, unincorporated trauma, unprocessed trauma. It has an extraordinary effect on our lives. Our internal environment, because of these traumas, develop all of these different, almost identities. Right? I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who they were ashamed to utter, right, to speak the words. And how they described it is, they described it like there was almost another self inside of them, right? Which is actually completely normal, because everybody has these other sides to them inside of us. Totally normal. What's not normal is that we don't talk about it, which I really hope I can do something about to change that in my lifetime. But this is totally besides the point. So how we see ourselves depends on a number of things. Mainly it depends on our environmental conditioning. Okay, now let's quickly go back to childhood. If you grew up in a childhood environment where your parents were extremely supportive, caring, loving, open, guided, then you grow this very centered self-identity that tells you, listen, if you can think about it, you can probably do it. Because this is what you were surrounded with. Now, the other side of that is if you grow up in a not so supportive environment, all right? And I cannot reiterate this strong enough. Not so supported environment, because the people, the primary caregivers in your environment, were probably still very much going through their own traumas as well, right? Not dealing with it, but being triggered or still inside of the traumas, which is a horrible, horrible place to find yourself in. So, but we get back to the point. So if you grew up in an environment where you were not supported, right? And if there were like trauma involved, childhood developmental trauma caused by either abandonment, neglect, or abuse, as I discussed in previous videos, our very first need is safety and security. Now, the part of our brain doesn't develop to process that we're not doing something wrong, so we internalize that and we end up thinking that it's me. I did something wrong. So to paint a picture, the people around me are traumatized. I'm a child. Their behavior is completely not right, okay, at all. They fuck up. That hurts me because my brain isn't developed enough to actually realize that it's nothing to do with me, that it's them. I internalize that and I turn it around, because the only capacity really that I do have is to process that my life is in danger. My survival is in danger. My safety and security is in danger. Now, because of this dynamic, we end up developing this really separate identities. Okay, that one, for instance, caused by this particular example, you can imagine for yourself now, right? If you go through your childhood thinking that you're doing something wrong, imagine how that grows in your adolescence. Imagine how that grows into your adulthood. It has a lifelong effect. More importantly, can you imagine what that does to your relationship? Even more importantly, your children, right? This is how generational trauma actually starts. Generational trauma starts when adults don't fucking take responsibility. Not to do the right thing or to not be traumatized, but they don't take that onus upon themselves to just, have the kunas to go, okay, yeah, listen, I'm really hurting and I want to figure out what's going on. How do I do something about this? Instead of that, what we do is we internalize it because of social pressure, society's pressure, which is a completely different video. But then we don't address it. Okay? We suppress it. And this is where negative self-talk comes in. So this is how big the circle is. So we end up having this fragmented part inside of our consciousness that constantly questions what we're doing. I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to do that. I can't do this. In cases that I have seen, it causes severe shame, right? And self-loathing. People can start to think that they are not worth the oxygen that their lungs are designed to breathe. And all of this because we don't address our trauma. Now, listen, it's not an easy thing to address your trauma. It takes courage, a lot of courage. But it can be done, right? It can be done. Now, back to my notes. How well do we mask our negative self-talk, right? For you watching this, you probably, if you are honest, either have or have had sometime in your past negative talk about yourself. Do you share that with anybody? No. We don't talk about this at all. The closest people in our lives, the people that care about us the most and the people that we care about the most, have no idea that we are probably under constant pressure because we get our environmental stimuli, and then the first barrier we have to go through is the scars I still have from my unprocessed, unresolved, unintegrated trauma. I can't do this. People don't see you for who you are. People see you for who they think they are, right? Really, really important, because our sense of perception and our whole psychological faculty is developed based on our conditioning. So if we grow up, once again, in my opinion, I think everybody in some way or form is traumatized, right? And goes and experiences some form of developmental trauma. If we take that into consideration, every single person has a fragmented identity inside of them. Right now, some people deal with it, other people don't deal with it. But the effect of this means that your child might come to you with a massive dream, because you haven't dealt with your own trauma. What do you tell them? No, that's not possible. That's not possible. Not because it's not possible, but because you think you can't do it. That's the main thing here. All right, the main thing. Now, to go back. In my experience, oh my God, negative self-talk caused by these traumas are absolutely detrimental. The pressure caused by it causes our internal environment to not be able to contain this, right? Because we suppress it, and then the pressure gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, in very serious cases I've seen, right, caused by big T traumas, which is high impact traumas, military people, ambulance people, medical people, and some journalists, these kind of careers, right, suffer from this. It can be so powerful that we end up with automatic reactions based on nearly everybody in our environment, right? We see something, it's a threat, it's endangering my survival, and as an adult, I react towards that. There are no control mechanisms, okay? If this is not caught and the individual is not actually taken by themselves and saying, hey, listen, Johnny, I have to do something about this now, right? I cannot continue to be like this. Then that keeps happening, okay? It keeps happening. And it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. That's the first one. The second one, the more suppressed we kind of go and the longer we try to deal with these things ourselves. Remember, because society tells us that we have to be strong, especially as men, right? Females have a very completely different structure because of the last 100, 200,000 years. I mean, originally men's job was to go hunt, sit, set a trap, wait, not dog, wait, kill something, bring it back, have sex, eat until the food is finished, probably have sex again, same story again. What about the woman? Have to look after everything. The children that comes from the sex, those children still need to eat while the men are out hunting, right? Where do they live? What do they wear? What do they do? So your brains are completely different than male brains. The reason I'm bringing this up is because females, they, in my experience, they suppress this much worse than males, right? And it is because of all of this social pressure that's on them. I mean, just think of the effect that marketing has had, right, on your own self-image. What you wear, what you eat, what you drink, where you go for holiday, all of those things, right? The world tells you you're supposed to be like this in order to look like that. Truth is, it's probably to sell something. But if we don't know that, and we don't have a very healthy, developed self, then of course this is information telling me that how I can become better. You know, wear this and people will like me more. This is how complicated it really is. So, reason I'm bringing this in, right, is because I've seen multiple cases where people suppress this inner trauma, right, the inner voice caused by the inner trauma for such a long time. Not even their most loved ones around them have any idea that this is what's going on inside their minds. No clue. And at the end of the day, these people are under constant pressure. Constant pressure. Not because they're not strong, or they're not able, or they're not this, or that they're not that. Because they care about what the people around them will say if they're being honest. So they rather stay quiet and not talk about it. I've seen cases where this goes really, really bad, right? The problem with such a long-term suppression mechanism is eventually you just can't take the pressure anymore, right? Your body takes over and your body shuts down completely. There comes a point where your mind does not have any more control. Okay, and then your body takes over. This is the long-term side effects of not looking at your internal environment. Don't do that. And if you are watching this and you are doing it, then please stop it. Find a way. Stop it. Because I can tell you this with 100% certainty, it's not going to end well. Now, the last part of the three is the implosion. This is exactly what I was just talking about. We keep it inside for so long, we suppress it so deep and so hard. Eventually, we implode and we just crash. You wake up, you're in a hospital or a psychiatric unit. And then what? Then you have to deal with that as well. Oh my God, I can't tell anybody I was in a hospital for a mental illness, right? It's not a mental illness, it's trauma that you have not dealt with. I don't mean to be so harsh, but this is such a passionate thing for me. We're destroying our own lives by not addressing the things that are right inside of us. Not in front of us, inside of us. It's because it's so close inside of us. It's because it's so close to us that we can't see it. But you can. You can. Look at your reactions. Look at your behavior. Listen to your internal talk. These are the clues. These are the clues. Right. The other side of negative self-talk and trauma-related triggers. There's no easy way to say this, right? The other side of this, even though we go through so much pain inside, right, and this constant pressure, imagine what this does to the people around you. All right? Imagine when you get triggered, what you do to a healthy person's self-image. Imagine being under constant pressure from work, going back home, being triggered by normal stuff. What do you think that does over a long term to your children? You cause developmental trauma inside your children. Please, this is incredibly important. If you're watching this, address these things. They will change your life. They will make you a better, greater, more complete person. But you're going to have to break everything you think you know down and incorporate everything into a new you. That's it. I was going to talk about what we can do about this negative self-talk, but I think I'll make a complete new video about that. I got very charged about this, okay? And total transparency on the table. I got charged because this happened to me this morning. I had a tough childhood. I'm still dealing with it, even though this is my work, right? If anybody ever tells you that they have their shit sorted out, tell them thank you and move on. Okay, because this is a process. Like, we can't have our shit. By definition, look at this planet we're living on. War and religion and fucking everything. Like, trauma is constant, right? And then you're not even worried about your bills at all. So it's impossible. We can learn how to literally let everything go through us and not hold on to it. Okay, this is one way we can do it. There are a few ways. I always find that so wonderful, you know. Like, all of the old material that we write, you know, meditate for 15 years and do stuff like that. Those people probably never had families. They were probably never in relationships. You know, if I go and sit for 10 years and meditate, of course I'm going to become enlightened as well. You know, because I'm going to become aware of my internal environments. But now you put trauma on top of that. It's a different story. Because it's much more information that you need to process. And it's not just your information, right? It's information that you assimilated from your environment caused by other people not dealing with their trauma. Right? So the loop is incredibly big, massive. But what I wanted to say anyway was that this happened to me this morning. I've a very good deal of my own triggers isolated and recognized and identified, right? As well as my own trauma behaviors, all of these things, right? But some of these are so deep that one day they will get triggered. And this morning, one of mine got triggered. It was so fast, right? It took me a couple of minutes afterwards to realize, fuck Marcel, why did you just react like that? You know, and the very next thing was guilt. Guilt. Massive guilt in my internal environment. You know, this little voice activated again in my mind, and I went, oh, Marcel, you shouldn't have done that. You're a bad person. You know, you've been working on this for such a long time, like, and now this is happening again. But because I've been working on it for so long, I knew exactly what was happening. I knew that this was normal. I knew that a part of my neuroplasticity that had been developed over a long period of time got reactivated. I knew that that little neuron, that electrical piece that activated the neuron, instead of going this way that I've been practicing so long, now all of a sudden it went the old way. I knew this, right? I have this awareness. So because I knew it and because I was aware of it, I was able to, after a couple of minutes, you know, go back and actually articulate, I'm sorry. I can't talk about it yet. I'm not sure yet what exactly triggered me, but I have enough awareness in the moment in time to tell you that I'm really sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. This is me. This is me. And I'm working really hard to change still these things inside of me that I can change. So this is the effect the trauma has on the best of us and the worst of us. Doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, what size you are. We all have this inside of us. So if you're watching this and you catch yourself talking negatively about yourself, sit down, take a piece of paper, take a pen, and write down what your mind is telling you. And then sit there and look at it. And then ask yourself, who does this belong to? Because it doesn't belong to you. It was put there a very long time ago as a natural defense mechanism to protect yourself. But you've been practicing that for a very, very long time. So long that you think it's yours. But it's not yours. Take care.